everybody, Trevor here, and welcome back to another Top 5 video. I have recently got a request from Nicholas Dohan asking me to do a top video on Dr. Seuss. And because of the late Dr. Seuss turned 121 years old on March 2nd of this year, I'm going to celebrate his belated heavenly birthday by making a top 5 favorite Dr. Seuss books. Now, Dr. Seuss, real name Theodore Seuss Geisel or Giesel where he pronounced his last name, was a famous American cartoonist and poet who was born in 1904 and had created such classics like The Cat in the Hat, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Horton Hears a Who, and of course, The Lorax, just to name a few. Unfortunately, on September 24th, 1991, he passed away at the age of 87 due to cancer, and I was a newborn infant when that happened. But regardless, he will always be remembered fondly for his wonderful poetry, characters, illustrations, and moral execution. In fact, he was a much better poet than Sharon Miller in terms of pacing. No offense. Now for this list, I'm only going to include books that he has written during his lifetime. No exceptions. Not even How the Grinch Lost Christmas, which came out recently. So without wasting any more time, let's begin this poetic top 5, shall we? Coming at number 5 is a tie between The Cat in the Hat and its sequel, The Cat in the Hat Comes Back. The Cat in the Hat is one of Dr. Seuss's most iconic characters in the Dr. Seuss universe. In the first book, he came to Conrad and Sally's house to help them have fun, only for him to make a bunch of messes in the process, which made the kids scold him and made him sadly leave the house with his giant crate, but not long after he came back just to clean up the house with his cleaning machine. In the sequel, The Cat in the Hat Comes Back, which is my favorite of the two, he returned to Conrad and Sally's house to find a place to stay warm, only for him to cause more chaos, like eating cake in the tub for instance, as well as summoning little versions of himself, who are Little Cats A to Z. But my most favorite part of the book would be Little Cat Z, who is too small to see, has the power to, quote unquote, voom the whole mess, which causes the other little cats to disappear, and to help clear a path of snow to the kid's house. While the Cat in the Hat may be mischievous, he certainly knows how to clean up his act, no pun intended. There are two reasons why I made these two books number 5. For one thing, if I put them as number 1, then it'd be too cliched. Secondly, the live-action Cat in the Hat movie wasn't as good as I remembered it. I suggest you watch the 1971 cartoon of the same name instead. Still, as I said before, The Cat in the Hat will always be one of Dr. Seuss's best works and most iconic characters of all time, and I'll always consider the second book the best of the two starring the character himself. Number 4. Fox and Socks. This was another one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books during my childhood. It is a book about tongue tanglers, aka tongue twisters. The story is basically Mr. Fox trying to teach Mr. Knox on how to do tongue tanglers, but every time he tried, Mr. Knox just couldn't even say them right. Eventually, we reach the climax about the Tweedle Beetles battling in a bottle of water, which is my favorite scene in the book, by the way. Unfortunately, Mr. Knox was so fed up with Mr. Fox's game that he pushed him into the bottle with the Tweedle Beetles and basically left him there behind. What's fun about tongue twisters is that they can be very challenging at times, but can also be a lot of fun. However, the biggest reason why this is number 4 is because I remember having this book as a kid, but eventually lost it for some stupid reason. I haven't read this book in years. But other than that, I still had fond memories of Fox and Socks, and if you enjoy tongue tanglers, then you'll like this book too. Number 3 is One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. Another one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books from my childhood because I always loved visiting aquariums in real life. I mean, who wouldn't want to enjoy looking at fish and other sea creatures in tanks? However, the fish themselves aren't the only focus of this book. There were other subplots that involve rhymes including Ned, who has trouble getting to bed, as well as Ish, who uses a wishing dish to wish for something including fish. But the one scene I remember the most was the one with the two furry creatures. One is loud and obnoxious, the other is as quiet as a mouse. And to be fair, I agree with the book on this one. I choose the quiet yellow one because the first one makes me want to punch him right in the frickin' nose for yelling so much. Overall, while the book itself doesn't solely focus on the fish, it's still a fun book to read nonetheless. I highly recommend you read it to your kids someday. Number 2. Green Eggs and Ham. There are many reasons why I put this as number 2. For one thing, as much as I hate trying new foods, and I still do, it does have a very nice message about trying new things, including foods that you haven't tried before. Secondly, I enjoy watching the Green Eggs and Ham series on Netflix, which I think is better and more action packed than the original cartoon adaptation, in my opinion. One of my favorite moments was when they fell onto the train and eventually landed on a boat, which sank due to the heavy weight of the train and other stuff. Now, Gaiamai, yes, that's his name in the Netflix cartoon, deal with it, is getting tired of Samayama following him just to make him try out the green eggs and ham on a plate. So, to make him leave him be, he finally tries them out, which made him beam with happiness because he now likes green eggs and ham. Thus, the two became good friends in the end. You know, the bonding between Samayam and Gaiamai, especially in the Netflix series, reminds me of the relationship between SpongeBob and Squidward, which is another reason why this is number 2. So, in conclusion, Green Eggs and Ham is a wonderful Dr. Seuss story with memorable characters, fun and excitement from beginning to end, and it has a wonderfully executed message about trying new things like food. And as someone who has autism, even I have to learn to try new things once in a while. And even though I hate change in general, but sometimes change can be a good thing, especially when you're trying new foods you haven't even tasted before. I highly recommend you read this book to your kids one day. Before we get to our number 1 pick, I just want to give some honorable mentions. The Lorax. I decided to make this one an honorable mention because I always thought it was quite depressing because of how the one slur ruined the environment with industrialism. That's why I kind of like the movie better in terms of a happier ending. Horton Hears a Who and Horton Hatches the Egg. I've decided to omit these because I haven't read them in a very long time. However, I did enjoy the movie adaptation by Blue Sky Studios from years ago. What Pet Should I Get? To be honest, I haven't read this book yet. And fun fact, it was quite interesting that this book wasn't officially published until 2015 thanks to Audrey Geisel, or Giesel, whatever you pronounce her last name, who is the widowed wife of Dr. Seuss. Hop on Pop. It would have been numbers 3 or 4. And my number 1 most favorite Dr. Seuss book of all time is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I decided to make this number 1 for many reasons. For one thing, it's a Christmas classic due to its moral execution about the Christmas spirit, as well as its unforgettable characters like the Grinch and his dog Max. By the way, I also have a dog named Max, in case you didn't know. Secondly, I thought the 2 songs from the original Chuck Jones short were extremely memorable. My favorite of the 2 was the original cover of You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch by Thurl Ravenscroft. While I did enjoy the original Chuck Jones short for the most part, but the live action one with Jim Carrey will always be my favorite one of the bunch in terms of Grinch adaptations because of its hilarious crude humor, Jim Carrey's performance as the Grinch, and that it mostly stays true to the original source material. The CGI Grinch movie, on the other hand, was okay for the most part, but not as memorable as the first 2 adaptations because of the overall pacing. Another reason why this is number 1 is because it's basically Dr. Seuss's equivalent of A Christmas Carol, but instead of ghosts, we get a hairy green creature who plans to steal Christmas just to make the Who's sad without their presents and decorations. But thankfully, it didn't stop the Who's from having the wonderful Christmas spirit, which made the Grinch change his ways in the end. And because of these reasons alone, as well as me being a huge Christmas fanatic, How the Grinch Stole Christmas is one of the best Dr. Seuss books of all time, and therefore deserves the number 1 spot. After all, no Christmas will be complete without this timeless classic, at least in my opinion. Now let me know in the comment section below which Dr. Seuss books are your favorite. Do you agree with my list, or do you have your own personal preference? Next time, we'll be looking at my top 5 picks for the best Thomas toys surrounding the 80th anniversary of the Railway series. So stay tuned for that. This is Trevor Davis signing off, and I hope you all have an excellent Sunday.